Hey guys, Ben Jenkins, founder, design director, and CEO at Warstic. I want to do a little video today, and I'm going to have my buddy Kevin Mayu with me. So we design bats together here at Warstic. I take the super non-scientific field, used to be a baseball player approach to designing bats. Kevin, although a good athlete, college hockey player, great golfer, etc., is a mechanical engineer. So he takes a very scientific engineering approach to things. Is that a good description?
Yeah, absolutely. I think organically we've kind of felt in a good collaborative stride of taking his years of playing experience and then my 15 plus years of engineering design background and manufacturing, and we kind of meet somewhere in the middle. We don't want to be too lopsided on either one. Yeah. I think so.
Like you got to have both sides to come up with a good bat, because the science doesn't always create feel, and the field doesn't always translate to science. So we kind of try to figure out what we're trying to ultimately build, but he brings the science to it. It's been really amazing the last couple of years to see our bats advance because of that combination, to be honest. Okay, so the point of today's video is we want to discuss with you what we think are the best current two-piece BBCOR bats on the market. When you're trying to decide between what baseball bat's right for you, it's really about understanding the differences between what we see here as very similar bats and really what the attributes are, what the differences are in those attributes. But most importantly, you understanding what attributes you care about the most so that you can decide which bat is most likely best for you. So I've got the DeMarini the Goods two-piece bat. I've got the Slugger Select Power. I've got the Warstic Saber Hybrid. And we've got the Rawlings Icon. So there's some assumptions we're going to take as we describe these. The first assumption is going to be that you are a person that believes that not every bat is for every hitter. We're all different. We come in different sizes, strengths, most importantly, swing styles. There's a lot that goes into making two hitters different. So first of all, we're assuming that you're open to that idea. So the second assumption we're going to make here is that you're a two-piece person, hitter, versus a one-piece hitter. In general, you're going to have that slight feel difference where you're going to feel a little bit of flex right before you hit the ball, even into the ball. That's the main difference. You're going to have always better forgiveness with two-piece bats for the most part. So there's just a feel difference. And I have met a ton of hitters in my life, and usually they're very distinctively one or the other. Doesn't mean they won't try one or the other and sometimes change their mind, but people usually fall into one of those two categories. The third assumption is that honestly, all four of these bats are virtually the same price. So two-piece bats honestly cost more to make. They're more complex, they're gonna cost more. Although we're biased about looks and we think looks matter, they can contribute to your personal style and your personal taste. The way that a bat looks can also affect the way you just feel confidence about it. So we may talk a little bit about that. We're gonna talk about three attributes, the three most common attributes that people talk about when they talk about comparing BBCOR bats especially is power, swing weight, and forgiveness. The easiest one to talk about here is power, because honestly, some scales may say a little less power, a little bit more power. I feel like that all these bats, you're gonna get the highest exit velo out of any of these bats if you can swing it. The key term being if you can swing it. So I don't think that you need to consider which bat's hotter in all this. They're all hot, okay? Or we wouldn't be talking about them. And of course, when we make a bat, I mean, the number one thing we start with is, can we get as close to that 0.50 mark as we can, or even hit it, which we have actually with our recent BBCOR bats. But we're not trying to create cheap bats that go over the mark. These all have the same power. The second attribute we're going to talk about is forgiveness. And I'm going to let Kevin explain this a little bit. But the thing about forgiveness is, it's sometimes thought about one way and it's sometimes thought about another. Forgiveness and neither are untrue. They're up to the individual. Forgiveness can mean how many points along the barrel or places that you hit the ball does it just feel good and not sting your hands, right? And I would throw into that as well, sound.
Oh yeah.
Like some bats, especially two-piece bats, sound great and not a ton of difference all along the barrel. one-piece bats tend to not do that. They sound less good across the barrel. And so just feel is one thing. The other way to think about forgiveness, which is a more technical thing, and I actually kind of like more, is how hot a bat is at more places across the barrel. So you might want to explain
that to me actually is a better description, and really what you guys ultimately want. You know, when we dive into our test results, when we send them to the BBCOR certification process, they give a ton of data, which I love, obviously. But what's crazy that I quickly found out when I jumped into the bat projects is the span of that little window that they really focus on is so small. Like it's like within a 1.5 to 2 inch range along the barrel. But I mean, that's the difference of, you know, out of the park or you're popped out to the center field, right? So one thing, like Ben mentioned, power is always there for like every bat that comes out. Like if you're not there, you're way off. But the next step is where can you spread that hot spot from the 1 inch to, you know, another 1/2 inch either way goes a long way. And that's ultimately what we've been focusing on now for our 2025 bats. And it's really exciting because we're able to consolidate this data and make slight tweaks with our supplier to increase that spread of the 500 mark for BBCOR.
You decide when it comes to forgiveness what forgiveness means to you. There's ways to think of it like this. A lot of high school baseball, for instance, I mean, we're in Texas, and even our season, people think we're down in the South. I mean, a lot of the high school season is played in extremely cold weather. So I can see where a bat stinging your hands is not a fun thing. So it could be that that's really important to you. I like to tell my sophomore son that if he's up to the plate at 2 outs in the bottom of the 7th inning, and he's trying to win the game, and he uses a little bit less forgiving bat that happens to be a little hotter across the range of the barrel, and he hits that ball 102 miles an hour, and the shortstop misses it by 1 inch, whereas if he would have hit it 100 miles an hour, he catches it and the game's over. I'd rather win the game as opposed to not have my hand sting. That's just me. I think I would be happier after the game if I won the game.
I mean, the ultimate goal is to get both, right?
Yeah. So the other part about forgiveness in these 4 bats, the good news here is all these bats, because they're 2-piece bats, they're very forgiving, great feeling bats and great performing bats across the barrel. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in this group. I would say, however, that these 2 bats, because they're the heaviest bats, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and I mean swing weight wise, they're the heaviest bats. Most likely, you're going to feel a little bit more forgiveness on these than the other 2 bats that are a little bit more on the lighter side. So you've got to decide what forgiveness means to you. Most of this conversation today is going to focus on swing weight, because I think when you're talking about these 4 bats, really the player's got to focus on swing weight more than anything, because I go back to the point that the bat that you're going to hit the best with is the one that you can handle the best. So again, strength, not just size. I would say forget size. Strength is really what matters here. And honestly, just the style. I mean, you'd be surprised how many players just swing bats differently because they have different swing styles. So I'm going to work from heaviest swing weight to lightest swing weight for the purpose of this conversation. Kevin's going to also explain a fun concept that we talk about all the time. MOI is probably the thing that we talk about more than anything when we're working on bats, because it's really defines the starting point of when we make a bat, what we're trying to do. So light MOI, you call it balance bat if you want. In-loaded, higher MOI. And then really a concept that we use a lot of times here is like a mid-load bat, right? Kind of right in the middle, right? So explain how MOI is determined and really what it means.
Yeah, there's a very complex formula, which I'm going to do my best not to dive down that rabbit hole, but ultimately the 2 main factors is the total weight and the balance point. So when we go through and, you know, the latest and greatest, we certainly measure all those static specs. And I mean, it's quite simple calculation. We actually have an in-house MOI machine that will go through a photo gate sensor. You look at oscillation time and punch them in and it pops out a number. What's important for that is, right, when we go through the suggestion, if you're a power hitter or you know, more balanced hitter, we can back up why, because we have the numbers. But ultimately, like, all these bats are within that 31 to 31.5 ounce range. So, but they all perform so much different, right? So it's not all about total weight. Balance point's a big part of it. You know, we talked about it earlier that you can have the same weight bat with 2 different balance points, and the MOI is like significantly different. Subsequently, you got the same balance points, but a ½ ounce difference in weight, and also have a different MOI value. You know, this is basically just under 2 pounds, right? For a bat, 32 ounces is 2 pounds. So imagine you had a really thin stick and you put 2 pounds right in the hands, right? That thing's gonna whip around really fast, but if I put 2 pounds right at the end, you're gonna struggle to get it, right? So that's why that balance point is really important, and you can control that really easily in our manufacturing.
MOI to me as a hitter is what I feel when I think about, is this end loaded or is it balanced or is it somewhere in between? Yeah. So there's a technical number that we can put to these things. So we'll actually divulge some of those numbers, apples to apples here. Let's talk about real quickly what's the same. Again, this is about comparing all these bats in terms of their attributes. So power wise, let's hold the bats up. We believe all these bats to be hot as shit. So don't worry about that part. Second part that is the same, I don't know if people know this, but there's a lot of, I'll occasionally see this topic pop up online, is that a 30-inch bat is actually never a -3 bat.
Never, yeah.
And they're almost all, I'm looking at the numbers of these bats, you got 31.0, 31.1, 31.2, I mean virtually the same weight when you're talking about weight. No 3330 is actually -3, and the explanation I can give you is if we do that, the bat's gonna be too hot, it's not gonna pass the test. So, whole nother conversation about why that happens that we won't get into today, but just so you know, they all basically weigh the same. There's a little bit of difference. Shockingly, actually, the goods is showing to be the lightest one.
Total weight, I was
surprised, which is surprising to me because it's definitely the heaviest swing weight. Okay, so those are the things that are the same, and let's get into what's different, because really this is about divulging what's different about these bats. Okay, so the goods, right? Easily the heaviest bat went from a swing rate perspective in baseball. I think this is an amazing bat if you can handle it. No different than if you were gonna swing a wood bat, everybody looks at the 243 with its giant barrel and skinny handle and thinks, I want that, until they swing it and realize they can't.
Get around,
So I would say straight up, if, you know, I watch Texas A&M, for instance, is the first thing that comes to my mind. Like the Texas A&M guys, these giant, strong dudes swinging this bat, I don't blame them. I would swing it too if I could. You're gonna get everything you can get out of the bat if you can make it go. So MOI on this bat, in our scale, apples to apples, is like 9710. You know, you've got standard knob on this bat. We'll talk about knobs because obviously ours has a much different knob than everybody else. So we have to point out too that the knob's really standard. The second bat down, I would say this is in that same category of more end-loaded, but easier to control, easier to handle than the goods. I got the MOI and the select power at 9680. So a decent step down, but nothing crazily significant. I mean, when I pick up these bats, I can definitely feel that this is a little less end-loaded, but I'm gonna describe the feel as an end-loaded bat.
Yeah.
I would see, I still see a lot of kids in high school try to swing this bat, and I'm gonna say this is more the college version of this. I think more kids naturally, even if they're a big, strong power hitter in high school, they're still not as big and powerful as they're gonna be in college, right? So, again, no right or wrong here, but like, this is a little harder to handle than this. If you can handle this over this, I'd swing this. If you need a little help, I would go down to this. So we're gonna step down to the next one is the Bone Saber Hybrid. Obviously the best looking bat in the group. So we make a really big jump here in MOI when it comes to comparing the hybrid to the goods and the select power. Like I'm seeing like a 250 point, so 9430 is what we have on our scale. That's a significant amount of MOI. I can't quantify that other than feel, but I mean, you could maybe describe
Well, I mean,
why
like,
that is.
Well, you started with like the heaviest of the heavy, right? And these are the power hitters in college. Like, you know, they're basically big league players. So as you step down, our majority audience is not that guy, honestly, right? So that's why there's a big focus.
I was that guy in high school.
Well,
Yeah, never mind.
So when we step down when we say step down, we're really actually just getting to the median of the market. When we look at, you know, Atlas, Cloud, like they're all right in that spot, which is great. It was a good validation for us to know where we stood when we did our full scope of measurements.
I would describe this bat and the next one we're talking about is, I could describe them as a mid-load, meaning right in the middle of the swing weight, but leaning towards more balanced. They definitely don't lean more towards in loaded.
Yep.
I'm comfortable saying these are mid-load bats. So obviously the thing to know about on the hybrid that's different than any bat you're ever going to find is the knob. So a knob we've been running with now for almost five plus years. One thing that I've never got to point out in a video is the taper of the knob is actually what to me is the magic of the knob. It's just, there was a lot of work that went into, a lot of tapers start here and they gradually work down. This one's actually takes a long time to get to the taper, and then it's pretty extreme in here. The reason is that fits the palm of your hand really nicely. And what I like to point out to when I have a kid in the cage that's looking at a conventional knob versus like the knob on the Bone Saber is how flush your hand stays to the bat at all times. If you take a conventional knob, which obviously you're going to find more often than not, this one's got by far the most extreme. Like your hand can't really touch here and here without losing contact. So to me, one, it's not as comfortable. Two, it's more susceptible to creating an injury like a hamate bone or something like that. Definitely not for everybody, but a very mainstream thing, which was a nice combination of design and science. So the last bat on the comparison is the Rawlings Icon, obviously a really popular bat. So really swing weight wise, barely different from the hybrid. I mean, we go down to 94.10, so about what, 20, 30 points, like virtually the same swing weight between these bats. Again, I would describe it as a very mid-loaded bat. Really, if you're in the goods and select power category and you can handle them, swing those, buy those. If you need a little lighter swing load, you're looking at these two bats, in my opinion. Then it comes down to a couple things, I would say. One, the big difference here, obviously, this is composite, the hybrid's alloy, right? So they're gonna sound extremely different. I think sound's a big deal. Sound plays for me big time. Like when I don't have a hit tracks in a game, sound plays sound and feel is kind of telling me how well I hit the ball.
Yep.
So sound to me is a big deal. These sound extremely different. If you like the sound of this better than the sound of the hybrid, that's a reason to pick this bat over the hybrid.
So there's, different manufacturing methods, but ultimately they will sound more muted just in nature because they can absorb the frequency of impact a lot better than metal. Metal's very rigid and a very quick shock, right?
But it's also completely subjective. I mean, what I think sound like, it's like thinking about music. I mean, I can think one genre of music is amazing or one band versus this, and you can think it's total crap. And that's completely
and that's
valid.
very true, actually.
It's valid. It's totally valid. Like, I can't tell you one thing sounds better than the other. It's really a personal choice. High ping, low thud, somewhere in the middle, whatever you want.
It should be actually one
Point
of the
here is
four,
these do not sound anything alike, really. They sound pretty extremely different. And then the big difference between these bats, the knob, but honestly looking at this, it's got a nice, the taper starts really late and then it goes up, and then the lip of this bat's pretty minimal. It's really small, honestly, compared to,
I mean, that's extreme.
I mean, that's actually extremely different when it comes to that. So I would say, honestly, knob difference between these two bats, not extremely different, to be honest with you. So I think you just have to go with, composite versus alloy when it comes to these bats. I mean, cold weather can play a factor into that. Not to knock the Icon, because again, I think it's a great bat, but like a lot of high school ball, we always think baseball warm, but when you get out there, it's baseball cold. Composite bats just aren't going to perform as well and last as long in cold weather as alloy bats. So in closing, again, our message today is These 4 BBCOR 2-piece bats, I think, are the most popular and the best performing bats on the market. They're all basically the same price. I'd even throw in durability. I think durability, you can pretty much rest assured that you're good to go on all these bats. 2-piece bats are going to break a little bit more than 1-piece because they're more complicated. There's more to break. But I wouldn't worry about price. I wouldn't worry about durability in these bats. I also wouldn't worry about power. You're going to get, whichever of these bats you swing the best, you're going to get the max power out of. So sweet spot, I would say for sure, not a big difference from here to there, but because these are much more end-loaded bats, you're probably going to feel a little bit more forgiveness. I wouldn't say that if you define forgiveness from a performance down the barrel standpoint that you're going to get much difference. I think all these bats, you hit the ball here, 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 you're going to get performance off these bats. So it really comes down to think about yourself and think about what swing weight is best for you, your strength, and your swing style, and go for that bat. Whether it's a Warstic bat, I would rather you hit better than just buy my bat. So, again, all these companies are amazing companies. This one's been in business, what, like 200,000 years? You can't knock that. Any brand that lasts 80 plus years is pretty sick. DeMarini, I think, is early 90s or something like that. Rawlings, kind of like Louisville Slugger. These are all bat companies that we grew up knowing, and I actually swung a Slugger in college. So anyway, all great bats. Hope you understand the difference between them. And last point I would make is we do offer a 21-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not sure if it's like between this and this, or this and this, maybe this can happen. Buy the bat, swing it in the cage as many times as you can, use it in games, 21 days. If you decide it's not for you, send it back, full refund. All right, later.
Nice.
Thanks.